Hello, Dawn Moore, Allegiance Title Company. The hot topic this week has to do with appraisals once again. In this market of multiple offers, we are seeing the sellers requiring the buyers to put something in writing, agreeing that they will pay the purchase price offered, irrespective of at what value the lender's appraisal comes in. How do you write something like that in the contract? If you put a provision in special provisions, the lenders are telling me that you are red flagging that file. You are indicating that you don't think the property will appraise for the sales price. And if you don't think the property will appraise for the sales price, what makes you think the appraiser is going to think it will appraise for the sales price? After all, the appraiser gets his information from your comps. On the other hand, if you say something that the buyer will pay more than appraised value, you are giving permission to the appraiser to come in at lower than full price. And he just may take you up on that because the appraisers have been accused in the past of inflated appraisals and having contributed to the mortgage fraud crisis. Recently, and on more than one occasion, I have seen an addendum presented by listing agents, presumably requested by sellers, that require the buyer to agree to pay the purchase price under the contract and any amendments or any addendums thereto, irrespective of what the property appraises for. In addition, it says if necessary, the buyer will adjust their cash down payment to accommodate a lower loan value because the lender can only approve a lesser loan on a lesser appraisal. Buyers have asked me, should we be signing this? And I've had to tell the buyer, only if you have unlimited cash. This addendum does not limit the amount of cash the buyer will be required to bring in at closing. Most buyers have a set amount of cash to put down on a piece of property. The remainder must be in a loan. With this addendum, the buyer is subject to an unlimited requirement for cash. There is an alternative that I'd like to suggest that may protect a seller from a low appraisal, but also provide some protection to a buyer. This provision is paragraph 4A of the contract. Under 4A of the contract, we have a contingency for a set loan amount. And that means that the lender's appraisal must be sufficient to support the loan amount, not necessarily the price. Therefore, if a buyer puts enough cash down, there is some leeway for the appraisal to come in at a lower value than purchase price, and the buyer is still obligated to close. Let me try and give you an example. We have a piece of property for $250 listed, based on your comps. We have a multiple offer situation, so the offer that the seller accepts is at $265. But because comps only supported $250, he wants to be sure the buyer will not get out of the contract because the lender's appraisal comes in low. The buyer says, I will agree to pay $265, irrespective of the appraisal. But then he says, but wait a minute, I don't want it to appraise for less than $240. The question then you need to ask of the buyer is, how much equity does your lender require to give you a loan? In my example, I'm going to say the lender requires 20% equity. So now, if I write a $265 contract, but I take a loan amount that is 80% of $240, then if the property appraises anywhere between $240 and $265, I will still be able to get the loan amount. In this situation, 80% of $240 is $192,000. The down payment then would be reflected as $73,000. That's the difference between $265 and $192. Let's say the lender's appraisal comes in at $250. The loan amount of $192, as written into the contract, is 74% of $260. well under the 80% the lender requires. Lender is good with the loan. Buyer is good with the down payment. Seller gets $265 on a property that was appraised only for $250, and the buyer is protected from an appraisal less than $240. In this scenario, at closing, the buyer can choose to put only 20% down of $250 or stick with his $73. The beauty of working your appraisal contingency through this financing amount, this loan amount, is being able to protect the seller on an upside and also protect a buyer on a downside. And, in my opinion, you're more likely to get a true appraisal on this property. This tip is from Allegiance Title Company, your resource for results. Go out and write more contracts and keep Allegiance Title in mind for your title needs. Thank you.